Good afternoon, I'm Milton Walker with the Midday News. Special welcome if you are watching on onespotmedia.com. A reminder as well that you can watch TVJ live by downloading our One Spot Media app in the Google Play Store or the App Store. That's the number 1, followed by the words Spot and Media. Tropical storm Harvey lashed Barbados last night with heavy rains causing severe flooding mostly in the northern part of the country. There are reports of structural damage to houses and the Christchurch and St. Philip areas as well. Barbados has given the all clear in the wake of the passing of the tropical storm, but the country's Department of Emergency Management, DEM, is still asking Barbadians to stay off the road for a while longer as they clear areas of debris, complete any necessary evacuations and protect citizens from live electrical wires which pose a hazard. Director of DEM, Kerry Hines, revealed that after consultation with the relevant authorities, it was decided that the country would resume normal proceedings, inclusive of the public service and the private sector. And in Jamaica, marine interests, especially small craft operators off Jamaica's south coast, are being urged to exercise extreme caution as tropical storm Harvey approaches from the east. An advisor from the Met Service says they should be prepared to evacuate at short notice. Tropical storm Harvey is forecast to enter the Caribbean Sea this afternoon and move westwards into the central Caribbean with little change in strength throughout the weekend. A news centre spoke with the acting head of the weather branch.
Being that Harvey could maintain tropical storm strength and move into the central Caribbean and the south of Jamaica by Sunday. Now, the wind speed strength for Harvey will very much be still outside of the range of even Pedro Keys or almost offshore Keys, but we're still having this advisory just to put our marine interests and fishers on alert that wind speeds could average just about 20 knots and gust between 25 and 30 knots. And of course, we're also expecting widely scattered showers and isolated thunderstorms, and this is in the forecast for Sunday.
In the meantime, the weather branch says tropical storm Harvey does not pose a direct threat to Jamaica.
The threats really would be for rainfall activity across the island, outbreaks of showers and thunderstorms associated with Harvey, which will be traveling south of the island.
The Road Safety Unit in the Ministry of Transport is urging motorists to reduce speeding on the island's roadways as road fatalities continue to increase. Since the start of the year, 226 persons have died. Pedestrians, motorcyclists, passengers and drivers of private motor vehicles have recorded the highest number of fatalities to date. A breakdown of the figures revealed that 58 were pedestrians, 9 were pedal cyclists, 69 were motorcyclists, 11 pillion riders, 4 were passengers in public passenger vehicles, and 27 were private motor vehicle passengers. 6 drivers of commercial motor vehicles and 40 were drivers of private motor vehicles. Westmoreland, St. Catherine, St. Andrew and St. Anne account for 51% of overall fatalities. And the police are investigating this morning's fatal crash involving a Jamaica urban transit bus along the Spanish Town bypass in St. Catherine. 1 person is dead and 2 others are being treated at hospital. The identity of the deceased has not yet been released. We'll have details later in Primetime News. The management of the Kingston Public Hospital, the KPH, is reporting that the crisis it faced with emergency gunshot and accident victims has eased. CEO of the hospital, Errol Green, has indicated that the facility is no longer overwhelmed. Several weeks ago, the health minister declared that the hospital was inundated with patients due to a surge in gunshot and accident victims, causing it to run out of bed space. Speaking yesterday on RJR's Beyond the Headlines, CEO of the KPH gave details of the changes.
We're totally back to normal now, and just yesterday we had a meeting with the CEO and the chairman of the university hospital, myself, the SMO, KPH, to look at how we support each other. But in terms of capacity, we are now back to normal. We are filled, but we don't have an overcrowding at the moment. It's not manageable.
And Mr. Green is reporting that there has been an increase in the number of patients being transferred from facilities in Western Jamaica to the Kingston Public Hospital.
Those who would normally seek services at Cornwall, they are now coming in to KPH and to UWI. There are certain services that KPH provides and Cornwall provides. that they would normally get at the other hospitals in the region. So we've seen an influx of patients coming in. Last week, one day, for example, we had, I think, 4 patients who needed urgent orthopedic surgery coming in from Cornwall. So we're seeing a little bit of an increase from that, but we are managing.
The Police Federation has scheduled another meeting with its legal team today based on yesterday's talks with the National Security Minister, Robert Montague. Federation Chairman Sergeant Raymond Wilson stated that the meeting was useful, but the group needs further consultation. The issue surrounds amendments to the Jamaica Constabulary Force Act. The changes include increased fines. Speaking yesterday on RGR's Beyond the Headlines, Chairman of the Police Federation, Sergeant Raymond Wilson, suggested that there might have to be parliamentary intervention.
It was the body that changed these rules had the power to do this. We are not certain whether or not the minister was in a position to give us that kind of assurance, given that he is only one person of parliament. And that is why it is important for us to have discussion with council. But we are willing to state that our position remains the same.
And Sergeant Wilson has outlined the Police Federation's next move.
Other ways of communicating with our members, and we have been doing that, keeping them up to date. Members have been calling consistently, but so far we believe that there are much more to be done before we get to that stage. However, if that has to be brought forward for any particular reason, then certainly we will do that.
Energy Minister Dr. Andrew Wheatley says the government is working to achieve the goal of Jamaica getting 30% of its energy from renewable sources by 2030. He was speaking at the Petroleum Corporation of Jamaica book launch on Wednesday. He stated that the government is indeed committed to energy diversification, as energy security is critical to the country.
The government developed a national energy policy that more or less has positioned us to have a certain level of energy security. And that's how this idea of 20% renewable energy by 2030, no 30 in 30.
He said that no one source should contribute more than 42% now that the government has incorporated wind energy. Dr. Wheatley added that the storage is a major factor in energy security.
It will, of course, reduce or smooth out that intermittency that is usually associated with renewable energy. Notwithstanding the naysayers out there saying that the intermittency is a problem, we are committed to ensure that we have that diversification as it relates to our energy security.
Member of Parliament for South East Clarendon, Roddy Spencer, is to meet with residents and taxi operators in Alley, Clarendon today. This follows a protest by residents earlier this week over poor road conditions in the area. Residents initially complained that the potholes in the roads at Alley, Lioneltown, Racecourse, Water Lane are causing serious problems for motorists.
Look at the condition in Lioneltown, look at the Migla, look at the community through Lioneltown. Right through town. If you pass the hospital, if you want some big hole along in there, then there's something right, you know, man. A whole accident happen on the road there, you know. A whole people mash up on the road there, you know, if you don't fix in time, you know.
Mr. Spencer was in the area at the time and agreed to meet with the residents to reach some form of agreement to fix the roads. There are still plans to hike the fines for predial larceny in Jamaica. That's the word from the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, Carl Samuda. In a statement yesterday, he noted that the government is pursuing legislative amendments to change the definition of predial larceny to include livestock and fisheries. Fines under the Agriculture Produce Act are to be increased to a maximum $3 million or up to 5 years imprisonment. Mr. Samuda's statement followed last week's police operation, which resulted in the arrest of 4 men, the seizure of more than 2,000 pounds of uninspected meat, and the closure of an illegal slaughterhouse. The police made their fine after trailing men from St. Thomas to an address in Olympic Gardens, St. Andrew on Saturday. Investigators believe the location was a hub for the collection of stolen meat, which was then sold to butchers. And we'll have more. For our Fact or Fiction feature, Fact or Fiction. Marcus Garvey was the first to call for self-governance in 1932. We'll tell you the answer at the end of the sports segment of the newscast. And in breaking news overseas, we are getting word that the White House chief strategist Steve Bannon has been sacked. According to U.S. media reports, President Donald Trump told aides he's decided to remove Mr. Bannon from the post. This development comes after weeks of controversy and staff changes at the White House. Further afield, police revealed today that the perpetrators of the terror attacks in Barcelona and Cambrils originally planned to use explosive devices to wreak greater devastation. 14 people have been confirmed dead. More from the CNN.
To the La Rambla, which obviously is one of the most popular tourist streets in Barcelona. I came to a crosswalk, and the light turned red just as I was about to cross, and so I stopped. And all of a sudden, a white van started speeding out of nowhere and took a drastic right turn right onto the walking part of the La Rambla street and right into the people that were standing on the opposite side of the crosswalk that I were at. And he just plowed them down with his van and continued to drive down the...
I heard a very loud kind of like, it sounded like, you know, the guy that was driving, whoever was driving the van kind of floored it, and I see this white van come. It looked like a utility truck or something, a white van with some blue writing on the side, and it literally came straight down the Ramblas and ran into people, you know, on every side. And the Ramblas is full of, you know, pedestrians, street merchants, street performers, and I saw people flying into the air.
All of a sudden there was this tidal wave of people running towards us, and they were hysterical. It wasn't just a small number, it was a large number of people. Children were screaming. There was clearly a lot of distress. In Spain, English is not widely spoken, and it was very difficult to work out, except when you could see the fear and the distress on these people and the fact that they were screaming in terror. You know, regardless of what might have happened, we knew we had to get ourselves out of there.
And still in Europe, police in Finland have shot and arrested a suspect after several people were stabbed in the city of Turku. An eyewitness gave his account of the horrific ordeal. More from the CNN.
We were sitting just on the front row of a cafe, and all of a sudden we just heard this woman scream really, really loudly. And first we thought, it's just an internal fight between two people. But then I saw this huge knife. This guy was having this huge knife in his hand, and he was just several times he was stabbing this person, and it was then on the ground, and people were just running everywhere, and we ran into this cafe where we hid, and this guy was just constantly stabbing at people.
And in Africa, 419 bodies have been recovered from beneath the mud and rubble on the outskirts of Sierra Leone's capital, Freetown, with hundreds of people still missing. 413 people were laid to rest in a mass burial in the nearby town of Waterloo. About a third of the deaths were children. More from CNN.
Light of day, the scale of Freetown's mudslide is all too apparent. When the earth gave way to torrential rain earlier in the week, it flowed downhill, dislodging big rocks, destroying homes and ending hundreds of lives. Rescue workers, now on a recovery mission, rushed to remove bodies because of the danger of disease. Sierra Leone must now recover from a disaster that has wiped out entire families. The dead have been laid to rest in a mass burial, and the collective grief of the living is palpable. Nearly 2,000 people have been made homeless and are now being sheltered in places like this, a school. But the rains have not stopped. More than 20 inches fell on Freetown on Monday morning. Officials say they have seen a crack in another of Freetown's hills.
But what is even now more worrisome for us is now, after looking at drone images, we have realized that we even have bigger portion now, about 1.9 hectares, that is likely to collapse, and we don't know how much coverage that we have.
Monday's landslide at the bottom of Sugarloaf Hill was 4.7 acres in size. Should this new crack give way to the rains, more than 70 acres would collapse and impact a far larger area. More homes, more people, and more deaths. Officials say they are in a race against time and are scrambling to evacuate large chunks of the city. With scant resources and high need, the agony may not be over.
And in sports, 3 days after being involved in a verbal altercation with teammate Stephanie Ann McPherson at the London World Championships, fellow national quarter-miler Shericka Jackson has apologized to technical leader Don Quarry, head coach Maurice Wilson, women's relay coach Paul Francis and her teammates. Quarry had told TVJ Sports about the verbal altercation between McPherson and Jackson hours before the final on Sunday's last day of the championships. In her email dated August 16, Jackson apologized for her role in the incident and inappropriate conduct at that stage of the championships. Jackson described the situation as embarrassing for her, while noting that she had no intention of causing any distractions for the coaching staff and her teammates. McPherson was eventually replaced by Anisha McLaughlin-Wilby for the final. However, Jamaica failed to finish the event after McLaughlin-Wilby pulled up injured on the second leg of the race. Finally this afternoon, the answer to our Fact or Fiction feature. We asked, fact or fiction, Marcus Garvey was the first to call for self-governance in 1932. This is a fact. From as early as 1932, Marcus Garvey made the first call for self-governance and shared his vision for what he called the New Jamaica. By the 1950s, there was a growing urgency and push for political independence. From October 61 to January 62, a joint committee of the House of Representatives and the Legislative Council, the precursor to the Senate, worked to draft the Jamaican Constitution, which was approved by the United Kingdom. The Constitution came into force with Jamaica's Independence Act 1962, and thus Jamaica's political independence was granted. And that's Midday News. I'm Milton Walker. Join us at 7 for Primetime News on behalf of our news, sports and production teams. Good afternoon.